All right. Thank you. Okay. I'm not sure if we do it again. Can you hear us? Sorry?
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yes, good afternoon. So we just got here from meeting Ma'am and Daddy, and all we talked was about the Knicks. So,
It's not true. We talked about the World Cup too. Maoz to
but I don't like football, so we talk only about the Knicks. And thank you, Asma, thank you, Jim, for hosting us, for bringing us here. It's such a pleasure and honor to spend the last 4 or 5 hours with you. Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming. So we'll start with introduction, and then we really love to open it also for questions, for reflection, that we have an open discussion, and yes, so really honored to be here with you this lovely afternoon. What you are seeing here was meant to be. Our brotherhood was meant to be, and we share our stories, and then I'm sure you will agree with us that it's just meant to be. Hi everyone, my name is Maoz Inon. I was born and raised in Israel, in a small kibbutz about a mile and a half from Gaza, and then when I was 14, we moved to even the nearest community, to the Gaza border, Netiv Asara. And my parents built a wooden home, less than quarter a mile, for what will become soon the most infested area humanity ever built. From satellites, to balloons, to drones, to maybe 40, 50 feet, maybe 60 feet, concrete wall that's going on also dozens of feet underground. And the last time I spoke to my father, it was October 7th, about 7:30 in the morning. I woke up in my home in Binyamina, which is where I live with my family for the last 20 years. Binyamina is halfway between Tel Aviv and Haifa, on the coastline of Israel. And my father just told me, Maoz, a war had just started. We can hear the bombs, we can hear the shooting, we can hear the shouts. So we locked the house and we are in the safe room. I couldn't hear my mom in the background, and I was still in bed. So I told Dad, I will get rest, and I'll call you soon. In the meanwhile, just tell Mom that I love her, I love you, and talk to you soon. So soon after, only 5 minutes after talking to my father, I called him again, and this time there was no answer. So I called my mom, and there was no answer. So I called my 3 sisters, my young brother, I woke them up, I told them, our parents, Bila and Jacob, are not picking up the phone. Maybe you can try. So we tried all through the morning, we tried to reach out their neighbors, their friends, community members that we knew, and literally no one picked the phone. No one answered the phone till 4 in the afternoon. And in 4 in the afternoon, one of the neighbors is answering, and we tell him, just tell us what's going on. We don't need you to soften it for us. We don't need you to come here. Tell us what's happening. And he told us. He told us that our parents' house is burned to ashes with 2 bodies inside. So we've decided to start the Shiva, the Jewish way of mourning, 7 days, to start it on Sunday. It was the first Shiva of October 7th. And on the second day, we were sitting every morning. We started just the 5 of us holding hands and crying. And then hundreds of people came and offered their condolences. So on the second day, my young brother again told us, you must make a family decision. And I want this decision to be that we are rejecting revenge. that we don't want to avenge the death of our parents. And he explained that by avenging the death, we're not going to bring them back to life. We only going to escalate the cycle of bloodshed we Palestinian Israelis have been trapped within for a century. And it took us maybe 2 minutes till we got this decision. And that's what we've been doing and saying ever since. And the day after, I received a message on my Facebook from Aziz. Aziz and I met for the first time back in 2014. For 10 minutes, and we become very, very good friends, but only in Facebook. So we weren't really in touch. And when Aziz offered his condolences, saying that he's standing with me and with my family in this tragic moment, and in the last 2.5 years, nearly 3 years, 3 years that we've been working together, co-founding Interact International. This is our organization, and of course we are partnering with Combatants for Peace, and Aziz is one of the board member of the Friends of Combatants for Peace with Gili here, and we co-author The Future is Peace. And I think you got one. Everyone gets one. Oh, you got one. Great. So it's 2 months since we published the book. It's already a New York Times bestseller. I think the first edition was already printed in only a matter of a few weeks. And what I'm so privileged and honored to say publicly, and thanks to the book and the book tour, I have many opportunities to say that I not only lost my parents on October 7th, I lost childhood friends, I lost people I knew my entire life, but I won Aziz. I won Aziz as a brother. Thank you, Aziz, I love you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Maoz, and thank you everyone for being here, for hosting us. My name is Aziz Abasar, and I've been active in peace work for many, many years. I know some of you here personally. Leila is a very dear friend. We've known each other since we both were in our 20s. No, I'm very grateful for our friendship, and Jane, who's traveled with my company, with Najdi to Egypt, and got to meet my family there, my niece and my sister, so it's nice to be in a place where you have friends. No, I've been doing this work for a few years, or for a few decades, but I did not grow up as a peacemaker because I grew up in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, in the West Bank, during the First Intifada, and I got to experience the full reality of living under occupation since I was a little kid, where going to school meant being shot at. I think first time I was shot at, I was 8 years old, dealing with tear gas. I had to take with me an onion to school every day because if you get shot at, tear gas, if any of you planning to go protest, always take an onion with you in case there is tear gas, because it could save your life. If you cut an onion, put it close to your nose, you breathe through it, it helps you not suffocate. And I did that. How old are you? 8, right? 9, okay. So I did that when I was your age. Having to take an onion with me at school, being shot at, all of that, which is quite a traumatizing experience, but my main traumatizing experience happened when I was 9 years old, when soldiers arrested my older brother, Taysir, on suspicion of throwing rocks, and he was taken to prison where he was tortured, so he would confess to the charges, and eventually, by the time he was released from prison, the beating caused internal injuries, and he ended up dying soon after his release. He was 19 years old at the time, and I was 10. And I wish I could tell you this is all in the past, and so it's all done and stuff, but unfortunately, I just, coming to here, I watched a video of one of the doctors who was in prison, and we haven't seen any images of him since he got in prison until yesterday. And you can see in his arms signs of torture. And it's quite triggering, at least for me, because these are things that remind me of my brother and the reality that we live in. This is a Dr. Abu Safiya who was arrested, literally, and Canberra. So this is a reality that still exists. And we often say, whenever we start this conversation, we started from a lower place than the day before when we did the same conversation, because every day more people are being killed and so much suffering is happening, and the trauma is significantly more on literally on a daily basis. And what we did in the Futures Peace, we did not avoid any of that. In the first chapter, we talked about October 7th, and we talked about the trauma Maoz has gone through, losing his parents. We talked about other people who we meet in the kibbutzim who lost family members. And then we talked to Dr. Dair Ahmad and to Abdul Rahim, both from Gaza. That was a doctor there, and Abdul Rahim, who lost 50 people in his family. And so in the first chapter, we already get you to dive into the reality and to understand that we're not censoring any of those stories and any of these voices. But at the same time, we also talk about how do we get out of that. And we share our stories as one of the ways of how we get out of it, but also we talk about what each of us can do. And in my case, both us, Maoz, and I have grown up not knowing somebody who is from quote-unquote the other side. I was 18 first time I met an Israeli who was not a soldier or a settler and who treated me like a normal person. 18. And it was when I went to study Hebrew, it was my Hebrew teacher, who was an Israeli Jewish woman, who recognized me as a human being and talked about my story and recognized what I was sharing and brought space for that. And it's such a powerful thing, because at that moment I realized that to work for justice and to work for peace and to work for equality, it's not an Israeli versus a Palestinian thing. It's not a Muslim versus a Jew thing. It's not, these divisions are ridiculous. And that it's exactly the opposite. It's, you can be Muslim, you can be Jewish, you can be Christian. It's those of us who believe in equality and justice and peace, and those who don't yet. And when I talk to Maoz after October 7th, one of the most powerful things, and I think we have such a short supply of in today's world, and you mentioned that in the beginning, is empathy. People kind of surprised that I reached out to Maoz, which I think we shouldn't be. It should be the normal thing, that when somebody is in pain, you reach out. When, you know, and it doesn't matter that the people who killed Maoz's parents were Palestinian. It was wrong. And I can say that it was wrong. I don't care who did it. It could have been Palestinian, it could have been somebody else. You say what is wrong regardless. And likewise, when I talked to Maoz, his response was that he's crying for all the children being or are going to be killed in Gaza already before any of it happened. And that showed similar empathy. And he didn't care that the ones who were going to kill those children were Israelis. If it's wrong, it is wrong. And empathy is so powerful that it can forge an unbreakable bond. And I think this is how our brotherhood started, is being able to empathize with each other, listen to each other, not always agree with each other, and that is fine, but being able to connect and then also work together to change the reality and to work for a better future.
Yeah, thank you. And even though it was like only 2 days after losing our parents, we rejected revenge. Me too, I wasn't born a peacemaker. Being born and raised in the Gaza envelope, Jewish Israeli communities, and when I was 18, like most Jewish Israelis, I served in the IDF, Israeli Army, for 3 years, and then lived very normative life. It was only when I was 30, when my wife Shlomit and I went on a backpacking tour. It was our second backpacking tour around the world, and this time we found ourselves in Ecuador, in South America, staying for a week with an indigenous community. and learning about their lifestyle, about their faith, about their food and culture, we suddenly realized that traveling around the world, we learned about indigenous communities in New Zealand, in Australia, in Asia, and in South America. But we didn't have even one Palestinian friend at the age of 30. We didn't know the differences between Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr, and Ramadan. We didn't know where Jesus was born, where he was buried, and never heard about the Annunciation. So suddenly we realized that for 30 years, we were living within walls. Physical wall, like the wall in Netiva Asara, and mental wall of ignorance. And when there is ignorance, there is fear. When there is fear, there is hate. And when there is hate, we, mankind, can do horrible things to each other. And we wanted to open gates within those walls. We wanted to build bridges on top of them. And we say that tourism is a great tool to open those gates. And at the year of 2005, Shlomit and I decided to open a guest house in Nazareth. Nazareth is the largest Palestinian city within Israel. Now I'll give you some numbers, and those numbers are also in the maps that opening in the future is peace. And we can tell you that we invested a lot of time on those maps, that they will be accurate and that they will give information that will allow you to join us on the journey that we are inviting you in the book, and will give us the same ground, that we are starting the journey from the same ground. So between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, there are 4 million people. Half of them Jewish Israelis, half of them Palestinians. In Gaza, there are 2 million Palestinians. In the West Bank, 3 million Palestinians. And in the international border of Israel, 2 million Palestinians and 7 million Jews, Israeli Jews. And being born and raised as an Israeli Jew, we live in total segregated communities. There is no interaction, no connection, no venues or opportunities to meet the other. So those are the walls of ignorance I was living within, and not just me, all my friends, all my family, all the Jewish Israelis that I knew. So opening a guest house in the old city of Nazareth, the largest Palestinian city within Israel, was a crazy idea, and I shared a lot about it in the 7th chapter of The Future is Peace. And it took us few years to become from outsiders, colonizers, settlers, Mossad agents, or Shin Bet. Those were the rumors in the streets of Nazareth, because who can think of a Jewish Israeli that will come on his goodwill, not just on his own will, in a goodwill to open a guest house in a Palestinian city. And in order, we proved that the lower the wall are, the higher the security. I will repeat. The lower the wall are, the higher the security. Because a grassroots process of reconciliation started happening in Nazareth, thanks to the work we were doing, thanks to opening opportunity to Jewish Israelis and Palestinian citizens of Israel just to meet, just to talk to each other, to host each other, and to be on the same level of equality. No one is dominating the other. And to prove that, unfortunately, the way we proved that was that 2 weeks after October 7th, our Palestinian partners from Nazareth hosted a wedding ceremony for my parents in the guest house we opened 20 years before. And hundreds of Palestinians came. People we knew through our shared work in Nazareth, but also complete strangers that just want to be there with us, to offer their condolences and cry with us. We were all crying together. And what I learned maybe in Nazareth after 20 years becoming a member of the community is that the first step in reaching a shared society a shared future is knowing the other side narrative. Looking to the other side in the eye, listening for his stories, for his pain, trauma, loss, dreams and aspiration. That only when we are courageous and brave enough to recognize that there is another side, that there is another people, that calling this land that I call homeland, he too call it my own land. And that's the first step in reaching a shared future. And like Aziz said before, we don't necessarily need to agree about the past and about the present. We live in two parallel narratives, but our narratives live in the future. And this is exactly the work we are doing with Israelis and Palestinians. But with the humanity, we must live in a shared future that is based on shared values of justice, of peace, of equality.
I'll add that one of the things I learned a lot from Maoz is when I first met him, he keeps talking about hope as an action. And it's very important because peacemaking is also an action. You know, people say, I have hope, I don't have hope, as if it's something you find today, you lose tomorrow. I believe in peace today, I don't believe in peace tomorrow. But a lot of these terminologies are really not about the sentiment. They're about what you do. And so there are days I might feel it or not, for those who are in relationships. Not every day you feel as crazy about the person you are with, right? Am I right? Or am I not?
Aziz, I'm just saying, this is on camera. Tomorrow it will be broadcast. So now maybe we can.
This is what I was going to say will show what true love is. You don't always feel the same necessarily. There are days you fight with each other, but you're still committed to that person. You're still committed to what you believe. And that's the same with hope and with peace. And you still act upon that commitment. And so when we talk about hope as an action, we talk about commitment. And the commitment manifests itself in the work we are doing. I lost Elise, he's still here. The last time I did. So I'll give you an example. We just put together this coalition of Israeli and Palestinian organizations, Interact, Combatants for Peace, New Israel Fund, few other rabbis for human rights, coming together, and we're planning to create an olive harvest in the West Bank, an olive harvest picking, where people can come from the States, people can come from Israel, people can come from anywhere to support the Palestinian farmers who are picking olives. And we're coming together to do that because it's important that it's not just one of us, that we all working together. And who knows, hundreds of people might show up. Maybe this year hundreds, or maybe next year 10,000 can show up. Maybe 50,000 can show up. And the thing is, you have to inspire people to act. Right now, if you tell people you should do this, they might be like, oh, I don't know, what does my voice matter? This is one of the saddest things often we hear wherever we go. It's true in Israel and Palestine, it's true in America, it's true in Europe. We've been sold this lie that your voice doesn't matter. It's by our politicians especially, who tell us that it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what you say, I make the decisions as your leader. And that is nonsense. Our voices do matter, our actions do matter. And the reason they tell us this is because they know the moment we act, every lie they're selling to us is going to be exposed. The moment thousands of people show up in person to do something, it will break down the barriers. There's a lot of research that shows it doesn't take a majority of a society to change that society. It's not a majority. It's not even a minority. It's a very small percentage. It's less than 4%. 3.5% is usually the threshold to change a society. But to get that 3.5%, to do that work, non-violent work, by the way, they need to be active on a daily basis. They need to believe that they can do that change. And it sounds easy, but the moment you are sold that your voice doesn't matter, getting 3.5% becomes really hard. And then you look at reality around us, all over the world, and you realize that extremists have been able to get that 3.5% threshold. Settlers in Israel are only 8%. And yet, look at the Israeli government, its policies fully dictated by 8%. Why? Because love them or hate them, like what they do or not, they are committed to their cause. They have a very clear vision. They are working day in and day out. They're not saying, oh, well, it's not us, the politicians will do it. They show up. And we have to show up as well. Our 3.5%, I think we are way more in numbers, both Israelis, Palestinians, and people in the States. We are way bigger number, but we don't always show up. And so hope is an action. Peace is an action. Pushing for our voices to be heard is very important, because what we always say, when you are silent, it's not that your voice isn't being heard. It's that somebody else is using your voice. Those are who are spreading hate, polarization, promoting destruction. What happened in Gaza, what happened in Yemen, what happened in Iran, when we are silent, our voices are being used. And we can't allow for that silence. We don't have the luxury to be silent. And silence isn't just in our voice, it's also in our action.
Yeah. And so when we are talking about actions, we encourage you to join us in taking 5 steps that can make our vision into reality. So the first step is to have a vision. It's written in the Old Testament, when there is no vision, people perish. So we must offer a new vision, a shared vision to Palestinians, to Israelis, to humanity. And then we must agree what our values will be, that we base our vision upon. So we do many of those talks, and each one is always feeling that this is the best one, like now here. And many afterwards, so what is your solution? And where the borders should go? And what you do with Jerusalem, and security, and right of return, and 1 state, 2 states, confederation. And what we are saying is what matters are the values the solution will be based upon. Because there can be 2 states, that one will wage war over the other, till a few months before now, we would say like Russia and Ukraine. But now we can say US and Iran. So there can be 1 state that will be a genocide, like in Rwanda. So let's talk about values. So we already agree on our values: justice, peace, equality, dignity, acknowledgement, reconciliation. And the third, we must build a coalition, because this is why it was so important for us here this afternoon. We cannot do it on our own. We must have you with us, acting with us. And we are not here to argue, and we are not here to debate. We had a conversation on the way here. We are here to activate you.
We argued on the way whether we are here to argue.
Exactly.
No,
I'm not arguing with you. I'm here to activate you. We are here to activate you. Each one of us, if we do something small that he wasn't doing it the day earlier, you're already in progress. You're already getting there. So to activate those who are already with us, but are in despair, that think their voice doesn't matter. So this is exactly our mission. So we must build a coalition. We must have a roadmap, because without a roadmap, we'll get lost. So must have a roadmap, and then we must implement our roadmap. And I will share with you also our roadmap, which is also, we like to, the situation and the reality is so complicated and so broken. So we always try to focus, to prioritize, and to simplify. So only 5 chapter roadmap. Chapter number 1 is to have a dream. And we have the privilege and the honor to meet like faith leader, spiritual leader, neuroscience. And what we learned from that is that the only way to change reality is in the field of dreams. that without a dream, without imagination, we cannot fix the broken reality. So that's chapter number 1 in the roadmap. The second is to amplify the dream. We must be very proud that we have a dream. This is exactly why we wrote The Future is Peace. This is exactly why we're here today, why we met Mayor Mamdani, and why we do so many actions together with other individuals, organizations, centers. This is exactly the way to amplify our vision. We must legitimate peace, justice, and reconciliation. Those who believe that war will bring security, that bombs will bring quiet, and war will defend, they failed all throughout history. Not only the American history, the history of civilization. The only way to achieve equality, security, and safety through dialogue, through diplomacy, through sitting around the table and asking the difficult question, sharing the trauma, sharing the pain, and start building a shared future. The fourth chapter in the roadmap is policy change. The US is investing now billions of tax, your money in weaponing countries in the Middle East. When you sow bombs, you harvest bloodshed. We must invest in reconciliation. We must invest in shared initiatives, and we know how to do it, but we now need to change the policy and start investing in that. And the fifth chapter in the roadmap is to create a political will. Some of you know, some of you not. There will be election in Israel in the coming months. But we cannot wait for the election to happen. It's too late for Aziz, it's too late for my parents, it's too late for many others. But if we wait for the election to make peace, we're going to lose more life. We can make peace today. But only if we start pressuring the policymakers, and we are already committed to build a grassroots peace movement. So to create a political will, and what I learned from Aziz, who worked in nearly 60 conflict zones around the world, many times those who signed the peace treaty, that signed the agreement the day before, they were waging war. And then they can be transformed. They can shift their policies, but they will do it only if we pressure them to do so. And we are proving also in the future is peace that all conflict ends in the end. It's not a wishful thinking. It's not a naive thought. All conflict through history ends. And there are only two questions that we should ask ourselves. When? And now when many lives will be lost, it will be achieved. So if we prove that the Israeli conflict will end one day, our question is, why not today? Why not today?
Add a couple more things and then we can go to the questions. I think in the spirit of amplification and legitimization that I was talking about, it's important to look also at examples of that, how that works. Every one of us has a avenue to help with that. Whatever we share, whatever we amplify, what are the voices we are pushing forward in the world. And the moment we are aware of that, it changes quite a bit. Maoz met with a journalist a couple of years back, and she asked him, how can I amplify your voices? She was Italian, so I told her, well, you can get us to meet with Pope Francis. She didn't know Pope Francis. You know, people usually don't have the Pope's number in their speed dial, unless, I don't know, you have a special relationship. But she went back to Italy and started looking into it. And literally a month later, Maoz and I were standing in front of Pope Francis, meeting with him, getting the biggest, longest hug you can imagine. And not only that, he asked, what can I do? And so being with Pope Francis has opened a lot of doors for us and has given us so much ability to reach places, be in the media in ways we would never have been. I think there was not one Italian TV or newspaper or a Catholic TV or newspaper around the world. People were sending a message from Brazil, from Portugal, from all over saying, oh, we learned about your work, we saw you on TV. That wasn't because otherwise these TV stations would never have interviewed us. But you with Pope Francis, it changes. So legitimization is really important. And then it pushes for policy change. Legitimization is how you change policy. So when we met with Pope Francis, we asked him when he goes to the G7 meeting, which he was attending soon after, to take our demands to the G7, what Maoz just mentioned. We don't want you to invest in weapons. We don't want you to keep sending weapons. We don't want you to keep using us to test your weapons on us. This is not okay. We want you to do the opposite. We actually want you to also sanction those who are pushing for war and for bombs and for killing, people who are making inflammatory statements all the time, inciting for violence. And in the same time, we want you to push and invest in peacemaking and in civil society and in people who are being changed. Like I mentioned to you just a few organizations earlier, from ours Interact or ours Combatants for Peace or Akhwat Amin, or there are some people who are doing incredible work. Rabbis for Human Rights have been picking olives with Palestinian farmers for years. Combatants have been doing it for years. These are the groups that need to be supported. And he went to the G7 and he got them to adopt that language word by word into their communique. Now that's usually just the beginning. Then it takes 2 years to push them to start a fund for that. And they just did about ridiculously low amount of money in it for multiple countries, about $3 million, 4 or 5 countries together. Considering how much I spent on weapons, billions of dollars, they put in $3 million. But you know what? You keep pushing, you don't give up. And that's what we're learning is we need many of those types of Pope Francis, and we've been doing that, going and meeting community leaders, politicians, celebrities, mayors, and pushing them to put this message up and to push for this message online, to push it in the media, because it's important to be everywhere. When you think about how many times when you turn on your radio or open your TV, you see people like Maoz and Inon. It's very rare. And that needs to change. And that changes with you helping us. Now, the book has helped us quite a bit. We're working on a couple of films right now. We're working on a few other things. Combatants did a film last year that did really, really well. You have to keep pushing those kind of messages. And we have to keep pushing our media as well. Sending messages to journalists. We won't say the name of the person, but we were interviewed by somebody pretty well known. And he said, you know, normally when there is a book out, I get a couple of people who know me, he'll send a message and they say, you should interview this guy, this lady, they wrote a book. He said, but with you, I kept getting one message after another, and it's like, and he said, I've never gotten so many people to push me to interview somebody. And eventually, he hadn't yet read the book, so he said, eventually I just gave in. I was like, okay, I'll interview these guys, I'll see what they are about. And so he interviewed us, loved it, it aired, he was very happy, and he sent a message that was sent to us later, talking about like, you were right, I needed to interview them. But here's the thing, it works because people made it happen. Not because he thought Maoz and I were great before, because he didn't know us. And so we have to do that for us, and we have to do it for other peacemakers, that it becomes a norm, that every day, every week, people like Gili, like Aziz, like Maoz, like others, are actually the ones who are talking about it. There's an Iran deal being discussed today. Peacemakers are not usually on TV or radio talking about it. They bring in generals, lawyers, and I can tell you as somebody who's worked in conflict resolution and negotiations and so on for 2+ decades, they're not the best people to analyze these agreements. They're usually going to tell you why it's not going to work and why it's all failure and why. You need peacemakers in the world. I'm gonna come and say bye to you. Oops.
I'll get the room to vote. Would you like to have a 5-minute break, or would you like to continue with questions and answers? Continue. All right. Well, who is enthusiastic in asking the first question? All right.
Well, thank you both for the work you do, it's so important. So you mentioned all the disinformation out there, which I'm acutely aware of. And I had the privilege of going on an encounter trip. I'm sure you're familiar with
I
encounter.
mentioned it. Summer 2022, I went on a 4-day encounter to the West Bank. Aziz company Peacebuilders, they are doing the logistics of encounters, and we mentioned it both in the future is peace. And after being on the encounter in summer 22, I wrote an op-ed in the Israeli press with 2 conclusions. One, that the occupation is the most invested project of the state of Israel. It's the level of segregation, of control, of hardship that Israelis are doing over Palestinians. It's the most invested project Israel has done and achieved, unfortunately. And the second conclusion was that this was summer 22, that it's not going to last. That the status quo is not sustainable, and we're going to face the consequence of that. I never thought it would be my parents to pay the price of it, but unfortunately not one of them.
And I'm so sorry for your loss. So my question for you is, Encounter tries to reach the Jewish diaspora, but there's obviously a very sizable Palestinian diaspora. Is there any such outreach for education for the Palestinian diaspora? I mean, I know Encounter needs to be scaled up in a way to make more of an impact, and that's a separate conversation. But is there something similar?
So first, again, Aziz, I don't know of anything similar, and what I can say that the same way the conflict is it's an asymmetric conflict. One side has a lot of power, and the other side doesn't. So it's the same also as I experienced it, and I'm new to this world. So also the organizational structures of Palestinian diaspora and the Jewish Israelis in diaspora, it's also, we cannot compare. The level of institutional and of organization from the Jewish Federation to AIPAC and others. So I'm not able to compare, and I'm not, but that's one of the things, as this you can say about being a Palestinian and Muslim coalition and network. So this is one of the things that Aziz is working on now. But that's exactly why it's so important for us to come and speak to each community that is inviting us. And yeah.
I should say, by the way, it totally changed my life.
Okay, mine too. Need to encounter.
Yeah. We work with each other.
Would you like to direct that question to Aziz's?
So what I asked, you didn't want me that. What I asked is, that reaches out in a small way, which should be scaled for the Jewish diaspora. Is there an outreach for the Palestinian diaspora?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important to work with both diasporas, with Muslim communities, with Arab communities, and so on. We're actually planning in August a meeting in hopefully in Washington, D.C., in which we bring in leaders of the Muslim Arab Palestinian diasporas to get together and to talk about how we build stronger coalitions. And this is one of the main things we wanted to do in Interact is, let's be honest, in the diaspora, the Palestinian community and Muslim community in general is much younger as a community than the Jewish community. There are Jewish institutions that are 100 years old here plus. We don't have that. Our institutions are newer, and so we're not yet as organized as a community. And so there's a lot of work needed. And on this issue, there are few organizations who are doing a lot of work here in the States, but there's much more needed to do. And one of the things that we really need to do is to coordinate better with each other, get to know who's doing what. There are many people doing stuff, they don't get enough airtime, so you wouldn't hear about them. I can tell you, there are people, for example, in Washington, D.C., who are advocating on a daily basis in Congress, who are doing so much community stuff, but you'll never hear about them because nobody covers them. And this is a challenge. We have to figure out how do we break through to make these voices more heard. And one of the ways I think we can do that is first we have to get together and learn from each other and work together and coordinate all work together.
I just have one follow-up question for you. Did you have trouble getting a visa?
So I didn't, because I'm a US citizen as well. I grew up, I'll answer longer. I grew up in Palestine with no citizenship, because being a Jerusalem resident means you don't get Israeli citizenship and you don't get a Palestinian citizenship doesn't help you much. By the way, if you have a Palestinian passport today, you are not allowed to even apply for a visa to the US.
Yeah.
Like many other, so most of the people I know in Palestine who should be here speaking cannot even apply for a visa. Yeah. My wife is American, and that's, I have an American citizenship now, and that makes my life a lot easier. But even with that, it comes, you are always randomly selected. I must be so lucky. I should always buy the lottery that I'm always randomly selected. Maybe I got so much luck, VIP.
Thank you.
All right, we'll give an opportunity for anyone else who would like to ask questions or share concerns.
I have a very naive question. So I was very moved by your story about your Hebrew teacher. And I'm realizing that this terrible segregation that you're describing, is there any move among Palestinians or among Israelis to learn each other's languages?
As an Israeli Jew that tried and not speaking much Arabic, but it's difficult to say. But I do think, and again, we can find numbers and do some research. More Jewish Israelis do start studying Arabic nowadays, and with the Palestinian citizen of Israel, who study Arabic in school, and it's mandatory for them to learn Hebrew. The level of Hebrew is getting lower and lower. They invest more in English. So, and so now there are some volunteering, like Jewish Israeli that will come to high school in Palestinian communities to practice Hebrew with the students. And there are many projects, and also to create a shared language exchange and supporting each other. But it's very difficult, and saying that, this is the policy of the government, okay? The government doesn't want us to interact. The government doesn't want us to have a common language. So this is like grassroots effort, but we are not, because we are also underfunded. So we don't have the means to do it. We need to invest in teachers, in classrooms, in material, and we do it like from our own limited resources, so that's very, very challenging. For example, there are only 6 schools within Israel that teach both Hebrew and Arabic, like on an equal level. And what we are meeting our ambassadors and Arab league policymakers, including those who are part of the Abraham Accord, and what we are basically asking them, you already got an agreement with the Israeli government. Now, based on this Abraham Accord, you should invest in those schools, so that you will support schools within Israel that will teach both Hebrew and Arabic that this is like in the spirit of the Abraham Accord. So we are just reaching out now to those countries. Again, I believe it will be a long process, but I believe there is some potential there.
Well, thank you for asking, and it just seems for all the wonderful wishes that we should have for peace and understanding if there's no common language.
But I will tell you why I think this is, but I totally disagree with you.
Oh,
Totally disagree with you. And again, now, but I will be now, it's not an easy argument to say, but I will, all the Jewish people in Germany, they spoke fluent German. They fought in the First World War for Germany. He didn't say that. So it's not the language. It's the acknowledgement and the recognition that there is another people. And that this other people is a human. And that we are human too. So language is great. It's important, but that's not what I'm going to say.
I would say, yeah, I think language is very, very important. Like Maoz said, it's not the only thing. I think what comes more is understanding the story, the narrative of the person. So one of the projects we're working on, you can find online, is called dualnarrative.org. Dualnarrative.org. And it's a site in which we interview Israelis and Palestinians, each speaking their own language, and it's subtitled in English. And you're able to talk about anything. For example, we'll ask a Palestinian what a soldier means to you, and an Israeli. Now, for most Israelis, when they hear the word soldier, it's a positive word. Somebody who protects them, somebody who's a family member. Every Israeli goes to the army, so it's positive. For most Palestinians, a soldier is a negative word. It's somebody who oppresses me, it's somebody who restricts my movement, it's somebody who tells me whether I can go here or there, somebody who arrests somebody from my family, somebody who kills somebody in my family. And the reason we're doing it is to get people to understand it's not only the language, it's also to understand what's behind the language. Every word triggers a different emotion in us. Even now, as we talk, I'm sure there are certain things we say that might trigger your emotion, love, hate, anger, support, not. It might remind you of certain trauma that you might have gone through. That's how language works, and we want people to understand what's the narrative that others have, and then what triggers certain words. You know, we did flags, for example. What do you think when you see a Palestinian flag? What do you think when you see an Israeli flag? We did, and then we did some fun things like hummus. What do you feel what do you think about when you hear the word hummus? And it's incredible to see. And sometimes there's commonality and sometimes there are not. And we wanted to do both, to show that there are differences in how we see stories, and to show that we are also united in some of our thinking. And the next phase of this project we are working on is to also start working on future, asking people, what's your vision? What Maoz started with, people don't talk almost at all about the future because they think the future is limited to two words, two state, one state confederation. There is more to imagining a future. It's about where do I see myself in 20 years? Where do I see myself where do I see my kids in the next 20 years? And to get people to start dreaming, there's so much research about how people will have an anchor kind of in the future, who work with things that pave the future, like people who work with kids, for example, are happier and more optimistic, and they work more toward, they see the future in a more rosy way, I guess, because they're working for the future. They're working with what the future will be. It's true for teachers, it's true for farmers, actually, which tells about what your dad and I, being farmers. So we have to push people to start imagining that future and do exhibits around that so we can make more and more of that mindset.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
We would love to hear some words from Ken Dorff, our well-known colleague with interfaith work throughout. So I can't wait to give you the microphone and take over.
You have to ask in Arabic.
So no, an observation and then a concern or question. As you know, I've been living and working in the Arab world for now over 50 years, so it's a long time. And for most of the time, I've tried to explain Arabs and Islam to Americans, and it's been a wall of ignorance and racism and hostility. One of the great things at the heart of a genocide, at the heart of this past 2 years, that wall is coming down. I mean, I cannot tell people in this room how it has changed in 2 years compared to 50. So I see this as a tragedy, but also an amazing opportunity, because as you know, especially among younger people. My question is this: I have seen over the years, and Americans generally don't understand this, the enormous power that this country has given to the Israelis. You know, most of our leaders of the United Nations, the Americans, and that unlimited power has made Israelis, most of them, unwilling to make any change. You know, why? They're the ones who have all the power, even though they have the population of all the power. And my concern is, it is a point that we have to stop selling, giving them weapons, we have to stop the financing, which is great. But as you know, Israelis are also trapped in a place of generational trauma. You know, 80% want to expel the Palestinians. So it's a really country that I think needs to be many on a psychiatrist's couch. There's some real issues going on. My fear is that if the rug is pulled, Israel can even become more radical, more crazy. So what you're doing is so important, because at the same time the power is pulled, it has to be supported by an understanding that no, the Arabs don't want to kill you. The Hamas charter doesn't call for genocide. Do you know what I mean? This paranoia, and I think it's generational trauma. It's so important that you do it, but is it enough? What can we do here? Because the power has to stop. It has to stop. What can we do here to pull that power away, but at the same time letting the Israelis know, no, the Holocaust is not going to happen again? Do you know my question?
Yeah. Okay. So I can start. First, your analysis of the Israeli society, we share the same. And I'm part of it. So the trauma is real. The fear is real. And what I think for one of the most, for me, in the future is peace, the most profound finding for me was on the second day. And we are starting it the second day of the journey that you are invited to join us in the future is peace. We're starting in Jaffa, the port of Jaffa. And we are overlooking Andromeda Rock. Andromeda Rock, if you've been or will come, you will see it. So who was Andromeda? Andromeda was sacrificed. A girl that was sacrificed by her parents to save the city from the monster. So they put her on the rock, they tied her, and then the monster was supposed to come and take her. And then Perseus, that's the Greek mythology. Perseus is passing, the son of Poseidon is passing by, falling in love with Andromeda, and he wants to save her. So how does he save her? He's behaving the Gorgona Medusa. Gorgona Medusa, by the Greek mythology, if you would look into her eyes, you will turn into a stone. And so he's behaving the Gorgona Medusa, and then when the monster comes from the sea to take Andromeda, he's showing the monster the eyes of the Gorgona Medusa. The monster becomes into a rock, and he's saving Andromeda. But who was the beautiful story? But who was the Gorgona Medusa? The one that when you look to her in the eye, you are becoming into a stone. Who was she? She was a Greek lady that devoted her life to Athens, to the goddess of Athens. You cannot hear it. No? Without it?
Just hold the microphone.
It's very difficult. Okay, yeah, I will try. Okay. So The Gorgona Medusa was a Greek lady that devoted her life in the temple of Athens, the goddess, and she was raped. She was raped by Poseidon, and her trauma wasn't healed, wasn't treated. The contrary, she was cursed. And then she was cursed that anyone who would look to her in the eye will become into a stone. And not only she was cursed, she was expelled to an island. And what we are saying, that the only way to kill a monster is not by bombing her, or punishing her, or beheading it. It's only by looking to her in the eye. Exactly the opposite of the Greek mythology story. Only by looking to the monster in the eye, listening to her pain, to a generational trauma, will humanize her again. And that's not the best part of the story. Will humanize us again. So the Israeli society is a sick society at the moment. It's a sick society, and we truly believe that the next war will bring security. We're not faking it. We truly believe that only another war and then we will achieve security and safety. That we need the next war so the Holocaust won't happen again. We truly believe in it. And we need to be healed. So it's not about accountability, it's not about punishment, it's about reconciliation. We must invest in reconciliation. And we, humanity, we know how to do it. We've done it in Rwanda, we've done it in South Africa, we've done it between Germany and Japan, we've done it in Europe, we've done it between the German people and the Jewish people. So we must start investing in reconciliation. But if we keep sending bombs and weapon, then we are doomed. But this is exactly why it's so important for us, and this is why we publish the book in English, and this is what we are going from one city to another city here in the US. We must change the policy of the state of the US. So it was a long answer.
Since we all know that learning about love and hate begins in the beginning, typically in our own family of origin, what I'm wondering is, are there schools that actually promote the Israeli kids getting together with the Palestinian kids, and how do parents in the schools feel about attending presentations like the presentation that we're having tonight?
No.
No. Okay.
No, schools don't, most schools don't.
They will not.
The vast majority don't have anything to promote this kind of work. I mean, what we mentioned, most of us grow up not knowing the other, so it's not happening in school. How do parents feel? Some would want it to happen, but they don't have the ability to push their schools to do it. Some complain about it when it does happen. So I'm involved, like I said, with Combatants for Peace, Parent Circle, a few other organizations used to go to schools quite often to talk to students. So I've been to maybe hundreds of Israeli classrooms to talk more in distant past. And especially since the new government took office, they have banned most of those meetings from happening. And it's been very difficult to reverse that decision. It's gone to courts and so on.
The chairman of the teacher union within Israel was just interviewed 2-3 weeks ago. And the grades of the Israeli students are as low as ever. And he was interviewed and asked him, why don't you resign? Like you failed. You are the chairman of the teacher union, and for 30 years now, and each year, the grades are lower and lower. You should resign. And he tells him, no, but the education system is working so good. We are teaching our youth, our students, to sacrifice themselves in the war. This was his answer.
And He didn't say it like it was negative.
No, he was proud.
Sacrifice.
Sacrificed themselves in the war. He was very proud that soldiers are sacrificing themselves, are willing to go and sacrifice themselves in the war. He was so proud of the Israeli education system for that.
Do you think it would be possible, as you said, to find 3.8% of educators who would be willing to have some programming?
There are teachers who would love to do it, but they're also constricted with being potentially fired. So I'll give you one example, and this is from 10 years ago. There was a book made, kind of similar to Maoz and I book for students, where it was the two narratives of the conflict that would be taught in Hebrew and in Arabic to the Jewish students or Arab students. And teachers were told, both by the Israeli government and by the Palestinian government, if you use this in your classrooms, you will be fired. And I remember because two teachers broke that, and they were both held to a disciplinary hearing. They were giving a final warning that if you bring the two narratives, that there is another narrative into the conversation, you will be fired. And so it's very challenging. So what we have to do is to reach students outside the classrooms, do activities outside. And this is what, the combatants does theater work with kids. We have been working on leadership program for Palestinian women where we're giving scholarships to Palestinian women in college, and we do a leadership program. And so we're able to reach them outside. And there are organizations that are doing, like Seeds of Peace, for example, is doing something, Creativity for Peace, Tomorrow's Women doing something, but it all has to be outside the education system. I would argue, sadly, the numbers we're able to reach are very small, because the moment you do it in the education system, like when we were allowed to go into classrooms like I was saying, I remember per year when I was with the parent circle, we did 1,000 meetings, reaching 30,000 students. That's incredible. We don't have that ability now. It is significantly harder to do that because of the reality of students being pushed into that direction. I also would say Israel is one of the only countries I know where young people are more hawkish than older people. In many places, you're very liberal when you're young, and as you get older, you become a bit more conservative. It's not the rule, but it often works that way. So you find 70% of Americans, I think, more or less, the young kids will lean more left than right. In Israel, it's the opposite. Older people are more likely to lean left, younger people are more likely to lean hardcore right, which is interesting. And I think it's not by coincidence, it's the education system.
I have one last question. Are rabbis, as an example, are they interested in bringing people together? Or are they also just interested in keeping this sad dynamic going on?
Rabbis in Israel and America are very different. Remember, Israel is a very Orthodox country. So the synagogues are very different atmosphere than a Reformed synagogue here in New York. It's very, very different. That it's not really a place where a lot of this happens. Now, with that being said, there are rabbis, like we mentioned, rabbis for human rights and so on. There are rabbis who are doing incredible work, but I don't know many congregations who are doing that. I don't know many mosques who are doing that as well. It's really different. Like, we don't have Islamic centers like here. I think I'll call it the diaspora, I guess, in America, the way Jewish community and Muslim communities function in synagogues and in mosques is very different than the way it works in Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, and I would love for Gili to say a few words before the night ends.
You spoke of reconciliation and hope. Reconciliation only comes through education, for sure, but hope is a very, very difficult thing and I'm surprised at Ken's comment that he's seeing a growth in cooperative thinking. I'm not seeing that. And I feel less and less hope. I'm 66. I feel less and less hope because of the level of corruption that is silencing so many of our voices in this country, in so many countries. And then for Israel, the thousands of people who marched in the street just days ago against Netanyahu, how does their voice get heard? I mean, even marching means so little to changing the corrupt governments that we're living under. And I feel just very nervous about how to change that perception of hope. Or, you can have the empathy, you can have. And also, something we're speaking of, with Germany, I visited there when I was in my 20s and sat at a table. They put me there for Thanksgiving. They said, "Here's sit with these people." They were all doctors from Düsseldorf. And when they discovered I was Jewish, what they were telling me about their education in Germany was so much fuller about the Holocaust than my own in this country. And I was so floored and so amazed. And we're not being educated here. We're not even allowed to speak about it because you're ostracized. Ken has lived it. It's just, it's difficult, very difficult.
Before you answer, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and being so brave to mention all that. As you're talking, I feel it, you're shaking, I hear this, and I hope that for my generation and onward and for my children, is that things change, because I can't stay silent, and I applaud for you to say everything you just said, because I am shaking on your behalf. All right, go ahead. I'll give both of you guys the mic.
I'll start. And I started by saying how horrible the reality is today, because it is horrible. I know so many people who have been directly affected. I don't have a friend in Gaza who hasn't lost many family members. I have many Israeli friends who lost family members on October 7th. And so I understand the pain, and I think governments-wise, things are, you won't hear either of us saying, oh, these governments are good. And it's not only in Israel, you're absolutely right. It's not only in Palestine. It's also in many places around the world. And when we speak to international players, we tell them this is your responsibility and it's on you. It's not only, oh, the Israeli government did this. You are enabling it, and your silence is part of it. We say that to politicians who don't want to hear it because it is important. But on the hope aspect, one of the things that keeps me believing in a different future is I worked in really horrible places, and I've seen change happen when you least expect it. And so I was in Northern Ireland. I met the people who worked on the peace agreement there. Schools in Northern Ireland still segregated today. Even though 30 years after an agreement, 95% of schools in Northern Ireland, Catholic or Protestant, they don't study together. They still have a long journey. But things did change. The mayor of Belfast became Catholic after not ever. The first minister of Northern Ireland today is a Catholic woman. That would have been, if you ask somebody 40 years ago, they would have said that will never, ever, ever happen. The UK will never allow it. England will make sure it will never happen. The majority today is Catholic in the parliament. The financial reality have shifted where there are many wealthier, actually some would argue there's more money now on the Catholic side than the Protestant side. And so it did shift. And I look at places like Colombia, where President Santos is a war criminal. He won the Nobel Peace Prize because he did sign a peace agreement. But if you asked anybody when he was running for president, do you think Santos will bring peace? They would have laughed at him. He was seen the same way we look at Netanyahu today. He was seen as, and he was, in my opinion, a war criminal who was willing eventually to sign a peace agreement. not a perfect peace agreement, many issues with it, but he did. And so I look at many places, and there's a book that I always forget the name, looks at the last 100 years of different conflicts that happened, and look at conflicts that were solved after war versus conflicts that diplomacy prevailed quickly, and they found it's twice more likely to solve any conflict in nonviolence and in negotiations than it is after you get into violence. And that to me gives me also a lot of hope. It shows me that diplomacy does work. Now, it does take a lot of work, and that's why we are here. And that's why I said it's not only a sentiment. We need people to show up. We need, and if Israelis and Palestinians aren't doing it, we need you to do it. We need to push our politicians here. When I say I want people to come to the olive harvest, I'm not talking only about Israelis. I'm talking about us. When we go and meet people in the Jewish community here, in the Muslim community here, we say you need to work together and not see yourself as enemies. It's so vital that Muslims and Jews realize that our voices together to our government here in the United States can make a big difference. And this whole division, if I'm Jewish, I must support Israel, and if I'm Palestinian, I must support Hamas, that's absurdity. You don't have to support Israel because you are Jewish, and you don't have to support Hamas if you are Muslim. It's not this tribalism mindset is what got us here. So it's change in mindset and change in action. We have to do things. Hope, I'll go back to it, hope is action. I don't always feel it, but I still do it. And every time I'm doing something to change reality, that brings hope to me. And every time I feel like, I'm not part of the change, then I feel depressed.
Perfect answer. I wrote this. Yeah, no.
Before we mention something about the Sunday event, tomorrow.
Which Sunday? The rally or the, actually, Gili might know more about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not ending the night because there's a lot of interest. If I can have one more, if everyone's staying, we're ready to keep going. Just, and if you are, it is past our time, but if you choose to leave, we are not offended. All right, so we're gonna open the floor back again, and can you introduce yourself? And this is a pretty good, better way on.
Thank you. My name is Heidi, and before I heard you guys and wrote the book, and last night heard you in Temple Manuel, the only hope that I had, because I have Israeli cousins on both sides, I have cousins I meet with every week, and we can't talk about it. We can't talk about it. My cousins, I love my cousins. I can sort of sneak something in, but can't. But before you, the only hope I ever had was the Jerusalem Youth Course. Is that still happening?
Yeah.
Is that?
Youth choir. Yeah.
Yes, okay, and that to me it's outside of the educational system, but it's so beautiful, it's so hopeful, and I was wondering if that's part of.
Yes.
Okay.
So we started each time for mission, 80 civil society, now maybe 100 civil society organization, Israelis, Palestinian, and shared organization that are working together. So April 30th, we've done the third People Peace Summit. The Jerusalem Youth Course was playing and singing, and more than 7,000 people arrived. This time it was in Tel Aviv, Palestinian and Israelis. Of course, Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank could not attend, but they sent us videos and clips, so their presence and their energy was with us on the stage, and so this is exactly what we are doing, building coalition, inviting you to be part of those coalitions, if it's as individuals, if you are part of organization. So we are always here and ready to partner. Yeah.
Would you, I know, Jim is interested.
We would just want to mention the rally tomorrow.
So again, just giving more information about the rally tomorrow.
Okay, Billy, we would love for you to enlighten us with everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. Salam, shalom, peace. I get inspired by this guys every single day. Just want to say that part of the ecosystem in the Holy Land, from the river to the sea, that no longer believe in us versus them, believes that another reality is possible. It's an ecosystem of organizations. One of them is Combatants for Peace. We put together the largest peace event in the land. Been doing this for many years. Started small with 80 people, and its peak was thousands of people. And now it's online. We had the joint memorial ceremony. We were born together. And we had the joint Nakba ceremony. We remember the Nakba together. And it's a way to create a culture that is already manifesting in the land, the future that we want to see. So the idea is to create these new thoughts, these new politics, new culture, new language. And we're going to have an event tomorrow with Brad Lander, who's trying to model a coalition, a political coalition that can be inspired by joint Jewish and Muslim and all people who believe in equality and peace and safety and nonviolence. And there's going to be a rally tomorrow in New York with Jewish and Muslim community members together rallying for Brad Lander, who co-endorsed with Mayor Mamdani. Brad Lander supports Israel, has been supportive of Israel for a long time, but he also supports the Palestinian people and opposes the occupation. Mayor Mamdani is the first Muslim mayor. And they cross-endorsed in the primary. And they cross-endorsed not really knowing each other, but saying that their faith is connected. And if we want to have a city that's free from corruption, we got to work together. And they're going to try to model this tomorrow with the Jewish and Muslim community members. And it's part of the larger work where we try to model for people. And we learn combatants is when people see model, they see an example of what peace looks like in practice. They can point to it and say, hey, that's me, I believe this. But these models and language and culture have to be created. And they have to be cultivated, they have to be supported, because the binary voices are much stronger. As I said, the culture is built to amplify binary versus us versus them. And to change that, we've got to create models, examples, and infrastructure that is really essential to creating the world that we want to see come out of this destruction and suffering and pain and death. We want to create a new world where we're all equal and safe and free. We know that it's possible, as history has shown us possible. Our traditions prove us that it's possible. Our faith, whether it's Muslim, or Jewish, or Christian, or Hindu, or any tradition, has in its core peace as an expression of the divine. And we believe that once the consciousness clicks, once people are tired of this and they want something new, we need to already create for them infrastructures and ideas so there's no vacuum. So again, populist leaders can exploit into more hate and more destruction. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for hosting the event. Thank you, Jim.
Question for Zach. Zach, when will we be able to see this program on LTV? Imagination.
Hopefully Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right?
Hopefully
Fast.
that's a.
Okay, Tuesday, Wednesday. So that will be blasted out. I hope you all get a chance.
Last votes from us.
Sing it.
Last votes from us.
Oh, okay.
Okay, as you're walking out, you have two bookmarks to take with you. The first is a mandala, which was made by Maoz's mother, and it's basically a painting here that has the words, all our dreams can be fulfilled if we have the courage to chase them, with many words of wisdom on the back, including from Pope Francis, who say, let us not sow that destruction of fear, let us sow hope. So get one of them. And the second is a bookmark that's made to look like a boarding pass. So you can take it to the airport and see if you can to the destination. The destination is peace. So it might be fun to hand it over and see what they say. And
You show the QR code with the QR code.
it will work. There's a QR code which will take you to our work. And on the other side, it has a poem in Arabic, and here the translation to it in English is by Sadiq al-Qasim, in which he says, "The day I'm killed, my killer rifling through my pockets will find travel tickets. One to peace, one to the fields in the rain, and one to the conscience of humankind. So I beg you, my dear killer, don't ignore them. Don't waste such a thing, but take and use the tickets. Please, I beg you, to go traveling." And this is why we are here, so to get you all the boarding pass, so you can come traveling with us on this journey to